Hi, this is Jim from Safety Wars. Before we start the program, I want to make sure everyone understands that we often talk about OSHA and EPA citations, along with some other regulatory actions from other agencies, legal cases, and criminal activity. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Proposed fines are exactly that, and they are often litigated, reduced, or vacated. We use available public records, news accounts, and press releases. We cannot warranty or guarantee the details of any of the stories we share, since we are not directly involved with these stories, at least not most of the time. Enjoy the show.
This show is brought to you by Saftey FM.
And welcome to Safety Wars for Friday, March 24th, 2023. How's everybody doing out there? What a week! For some people, the week is not over. We're going to be doing some more interviews. And I have to apologize up front. I forgot to upload the program yesterday. Oops. We had a good one. Alright. More interviews from Anastasia Pashigriva. Right? At least, hold on. Let me double check. Let me make sure. Did I upload that? I don't remember doing it. Now that I think of it, you can tell my mind is toast on a Friday night. Give me a second here. No, I did not upload it. So last night we had an interview from the Creative Society, right? Anastasia Pashigriva. We met at the International Conference on Climate Change, and she feels, more than feeling, there's actual research in this, that global climate change is geologic in origin, not emissions. Tonight we're going to have another interview from Robert Bradley Jr. He is from the Institute for Energy Research.org. He's going to talk about energy markets. He's going to talk about what I've always said, which is what is it? How can I say this politely? That basically things have not been well thought out with our energy policy and everything else along the ways, and it's going to be detrimental to us in the long term. He has a point of view. Has a lot of points of view. However, a lot of stuff we're force fed by a lot of different sources, whether they're in school, the quote unquote news media, and everything else. And one of the purposes of our program here is not to be manipulated. We're manipulated all over the place in the health and safety field. People, in society in general, right? It seems like a big manipulation game. And how do we overcome the manipulation? And that is through knowledge and education and learning and experience and everything else. Guess what? You cannot have be empowered, right? True empowerment without being educated. So we bring you a lot of alternative points of view here on this, and you're never going to get anything less than that, than alternative points of view. Some of them I agree with, some of them I don't. Where we have some guests scheduled in the very near future, I don't agree with them on a lot of stuff, but that doesn't mean that we can't get along with them. We can't have a dialogue with them. We cannot, we're not into cancel culture here. We're into, debates, or maybe discussion, learning. Why? If only to refine our ideas, maybe, or maybe maybe we're wrong on things. We could change our mind on it. Now, knowledge is not a scary thing all the time. Ideas are bulletproof, to quote the movie V, right? Ideas are bulletproof out there. And I tell you what, I do very little editing to any of these interviews for a lot of reasons, right? I hate when news outlets heavily redact and produce all of their stories, and it's an issue. So we're going to go right off the bat here. We're going to start with we're going to go right off the bat with all the markets today. So let me get that on. No, I will not hit the clown music this time. Right, that's the clown music. All right, Dow Jones Industrial Average closed at 32,237. It's up 0.41%. S&P 500, 39,070, up 0.56%. NASDAQ closed at 11,823.96, up 0.31%. Russell 2000 at 1734.92. 10-year Treasury notes sunk to 3.376%. Bitcoin came down a little bit to 27,505.98. Crude oil came down a little bit to 69.20. I thought it was lower yesterday. Let me go and look that up. Nah, it's all about the same out here. Precious metals. Gold came down to 1989.30. Silver went up 23.50. Platinum came down to 998. And palladium is down to 14.55. Right, so we got that over with. I got it in by the end of the music. Ooh. So we have a lot of news today, and like I said, we have an interview at the end. So we're going to go right to ocean news today. So one of the issues out there, right, that I have is with landscapers. Love them. I used to do it. Back in the day, everybody had landscaper things in my neighborhood. No, my brothers had a little landscaping business set up when they were teenagers. They had 5 or 6 clientele or customers. They used to, wasn't a lot of money they were making, but it was spending money, some bling, and so I have a real soft spot where the issue comes is when you have a landscape company who feels that they do not have. Hold on, I got a cough here. Pardon me, guys. Had to cough. A federal workplace, right? So everybody had this. And it is with these larger companies that are out there. Again, no training, no training. Don't have the right equipment. They don't have a lot of stuff going on there. All right, for that. So what happens? People get hurt, right? That's one of the side effects, right? People get hurt. Heat stress, which is a major issue now, right? Because they're thinking about heat stress regulations with that. Right, that's another issue with this, where companies are getting cited for heat stress issues, heat stroke. And then you have the other violations of improper storage of gasoline in plastic containers, off-labelable storage containers, or anything else. Hold on, Jessica, you want to say hello? She's saying no. Come on, say hello. No. Okay. Doesn't want to say hello. My daughter and I share an office here. So here we go. U.S. Department of Labor finds lawn service contractor ignored safety standards. Allow workers to operate riding motors dangerously at Fort Campbell. OSHA proposes $198,000 in penalties. What were some of the things? Exposing employees to potential lacerations and serious eye injuries by permitting workers to operate mowers with shoot guards in a tied-up position. Putting workers at risk of crushing injuries or death in a rollover by allowing employees to operate zero-turn mowers on slopes steeper than 15 degrees. I don't know what a zero-turn mower is. Exposing employees to potential lacerations by allowing unsafe operation of a bench grinder. They're probably sharpening tools with that. And allowing workers to operate a tractor without a cover on the power takeoff or PTO shaft. So that's rotating, right? So $200,000 in penalties. You got to mow a lot of lawns to make up that money, man. Wow. So, and as we all say, everyone's innocent till proven guilty, and all of these things get reduced down, negotiated, vacated, and everything else. So what do we got here? Citation 1, item 1. General duty clause. The employer did not furnish employment at a place of employment which employees were free from recognized hazards that were caused or likely to cause death or serious physical harm to employees from crushing hazards. So this happened. This was observed on 3 different occasions here. The employer exposed employees to crushing injuries or death from mower rollover on grade sloped at angles that exceeded the manufacturer's recommended limit of 15 degrees, in that the employees were operating a zero-turn mower in culverts with a grade of 23.5 degrees. That's also the 23.5, what's it called? The angle of the Earth, 23.5 degrees. But anyway. On or about then second occasion, at times prior, the employer exposed employees to crushing injuries, right? Again, on grade slope that angles that exceeded the manufacturer's recommended limit of 15 degrees, and that operators were operating mowers and culverts with a grade of 17 degrees. And then a couple of week or so later, 2 weeks later, almost, the employer exposed employees to crushing injuries, right, on slopes that were 27.1 degrees, right? So, anyway, what do they got to do? Measure and identify slopes within the company's mowing area that exceed 15 degrees and use appropriate methods for mowing these areas. The citation, that's $15,625. 1910-132 at citation 1, item 2. Protective equipment was not used when necessary. Wherever hazards capable of causing injury and impairment were encountered. That's $15,625. Citation 1, item 3. Serious missing guarding on 3 different occasions. On the lawnmowers, $13,394. Citation 1, item 4. Work rests on grinding machinery were not adjusted closely to the wheel with a maximum opening of 1/8 of an inch. That's a common one, right? Whenever you see grinders, that's right, pedestal, especially pedestal grinders, that's very common. On or about blah blah blah, and times prior, the employer exposed employees to series misspelling here, serious it should be, lacerations or eye injury from struck by and caught in hazards. That employees are using a bench grinder to trim metal parts in the space between the work rest and the abrasive wheel was greater than 1/4 of an inch. All right. Penalty was $8,929. Citation 1, item 5, serious. All exposed parts of horizontal shaft 7 feet or less from the floor working platform were not protected by a stationary casing enclosing shafting completely. So the PTO, right, did not have a cover. Power takeoff, $11,162. Citation 2, item 1, serious. All right, this is a willful, serious violation. It costs them $133,000, almost $134,000 for this bad boy. All power-driven machines, belts, and gears are not positioned or otherwise guarded to prevent the operator's accidental contact therewith during normal starting, mounting, and operation of the machine. So basically, it's rather lengthy here. Belt spindle guards were removed. Basically, everything was on here with a couple of different pieces of equipment that were no guards, missing guards. Right? So that one, total of almost $200,000. So, again, this is a summer job, often a teenager's job. OSHA has a big outreach thing for that. A lot of information on minors who are working, on how to protect them. That's a summer job type thing. We'll probably do a couple of programs with that. U.S. Department of Labor and Trumbull Corporation partners to protect workers on Berkeley County, West Virginia highway construction job. The partnership seeks to prevent worker injuries and exposures to hazards by developing a public-private approach to safety and health during the construction of a 3-mile, 4-lane highway in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. The project includes construction of a roadway bypass, 3 million cubic yards of excavation, and construction of 3 bridges. So that's pretty good here, right? That they're doing that, partnering up. Okay. Let's go for a commercial break.
In the professional safety community, communication and planning are just a few keys to your program's success. The question many practitioners have is, where do I start? Dr. Jay Allen, the creator of the Safety FM platform and host of the Rated R Safety Show, has built a global foundation to help you along the way. Go to safetyfm.com and listen to some of the industry's best and most involved professionals, including Blaine Hoffman with the Safety Pro, Sam Goodman with the Hop Nerd, Sheldon Primus with the Safety Consultant, Jim Pozell with Safety Wars, Emily Elrod with Unapologetically Bold, and many others. As individuals, we can do great things, but as a team, we become amazing. Dial into safetyfm.com today and surround yourself with a powerful force of knowledge and support.
Is your safety training old, stale, and hackneyed? Is your safety trainer still preaching a warped version of behavior-based safety? How about safety training that actually addresses your hazards in your workplaces and is not standardized baloney from 25 years ago? Contact the Safety Wars team at safetywars.com or call Jim Pozell at 845-269-5772. Remember, if you're receiving this message, you are the solution to unsafe workplaces. And we are back. So, doing multitasking here, right? We were the engineer, we were the producer, we're everything else. Right? Hold on.
You are listening to Safety Wars. Tomorrow's Safety Today.
Okay, so here we go. Some good news out there. Governor Newsom from California eases water restrictions after storms drench California. This is an article by Jill McLaughlin from the Epoch Times. The drought is not yet over, but this year's wet and snowy storms have delivered enough water for California to ease residential restrictions, Governor Gavin Newsom announced on March 24th. Newsom signed an executive order Friday to stop asking residents to cut their water by 15%, a measure first called for 2 years ago. Californians fell short of that, cutting back about 7.6% overall last June compared with the same month in 2020. Are we out of the drought? Is the drought over in the state of California? Newsom said on Friday. I want to affirm your instinct that it should be. It feels like it is. It is and continues to be complicated. I know that's disappointing for some because it would be nice to have a governor say the drought is over. The governor also increased allocations of water districts and everything else. One thing I'm not seeing here is the blame game, right? At least in not that article. Anti-Semitism increases, also from the Epoch Times article by Jackson Richmond. Anti-Semitism increased by 36% in the U.S. The number of anti-Semitic incidents in the U.S. in 2022 increased by 36% from the previous year, according to the Anti-Defamation League. Right, this is actually a big issue in my community in Rockland County because you have a huge population of ultra-Orthodox and Orthodox Jews here. So, big issue with anti-Semitism. There was actually a major attack, not this past Hanukkah, but the Hanukkah before. There were 3,700 anti-Semitic incidents last year, where there was 2,700 the year before, right? This is a record high since 1979, since data was being collected. So what kind of attacks have there been? Anti-Semitic harassment, anti-Semitic vandalism, and anti-Semitic assaults. All before the 111 recorded anti-Semitic assaults, one which resulted in a fatality, were done with a deadly weapon. Orthodox Jews consisted of 53% of the assaults. Again, this is, sickening to me. Scream as loud as you can. 5 boys are rescued from a New York City tunnel. 5 mischievous boys had to be rescued after they crawled through a storm drain tunnel in New York City and got lost. An audio released by the fire department, 911 911 dispatchers worked to pinpoint the boys' exact location and then tell them to scream once rescuers are close enough to hear. Now you can scream as loud as you can, a dispatcher says. They want to scream and yell. What I'm amazed about is that they had cell phone coverage there. I'll be perfectly honest with you. The boys walked about a quarter mile and then called 911 when they couldn't find their way back. We were stuck in the sewer, one of the boys said on the recording. You're stuck where? The dispatcher sounds. Second dispatcher says he's familiar with the area and tries to determine exactly where the boys are. Once you went down, was the sewer left, right, straight, or where was it? I need you to guide me. When the sirens can be heard, the dispatcher tells the boys to scream. At first, the boys fear that the rescuers aren't stopping. It sounded like they went past us. They're not going anywhere. We're going to get you out of there. Right, so... Again, this is like an old thing. I don't know if kids in other parts of the country do this. This must be a New York and New Jersey thing because we used to do the same thing. We used to go into the storm sewers, not the sanitary, the storm sewers around Woodbridge. That was one of the things until somebody tripped. That somebody was me, and it's pitch dark in there and everything else. And what else? Vagrants and drug addicts used to be in those things and everything else. And then once it started raining, they made sure they hightailed it out of there because they were going to be flooded. But then our parents found out about it. They were yelling and screaming at us. It wasn't a good thing. So I get that. Now I'm not going to fault the boys for doing that. No, boys will be boys. I don't know. I tell you what, it's safer than some of the online stuff that's out there. Okay, so in Indonesia, some news. Indonesia volcano erupts and spews towers, smoke and ash. Indonesians Mount Ili, Luotolak, Luototolak. Okay. Mount Ili, Lulutotolak, erupted on Friday, belching a tower of smoke and ash almost a kilometer into the sky, prompting the authorities to impose a no-go zone in the area. There were no immediate reports of injuries, which set up a tower of volcanic smoke 700 meters high in a remote part of Southeast Asia archipelago nation. But the authorities imposed an exclusion zone of 2 kilometers around the crater in East Nusa Tenggara province and advised nearby residents to wear masks to avoid respiratory problems. Right? East China Sea, Isles near potentially huge oil deposits. So, there was a U.S. destroyer that was allegedly chased out of the area yesterday, right? And, China is claiming control of that area. Well, here we have 2 stories from the Straits Times, both saying the same thing. East China Sea and South China Sea. They have huge amounts of oil, gas reserves, and rich fishing grounds. Could that have something to do with this? I don't know. Sounds pretty suspicious to me. Now, CDC, right? And then we're going to go into our interview. This is frustrating. I shut down the window. Oh, no, here you go. CDC. So they're saying a lot about this. Is Candida Aurus, a drug-resistant germ that spreads in healthcare facilities. I'm going to read from the fact sheet here and highlight it. This is all from Centers for Disease Control, cdc.gov. Candida auris, also known as C. auris, is a fungus that causes serious infections. Patients with C. auris infection, their family members, and other close contacts can help stop it from spreading. It causes serious infections. C. auris can cause bloodstream infections and even death, particularly in hospital and nursing home patients with serious medical problems. More than 1 in 3 patients with invasive infections die. So I heard on the news it's a lot higher than that. It is often resistant to medicine. So one of the things with, and I'm getting this from Paul Stamets. If you're a Star Trek Discovery fan, you'll recognize the name. The character on there was named after the real Paul Stamets, who was a consultant for the first season of the show. He's one of the world's foremost authorities on mycology, right? The study of mushrooms and funguses. And it's believed, right? The theory that he gives, and it's pretty much out there. The problem with funguses is that our immune system does not necessarily recognize it as an invader. Okay, so what happens is we all evolved from funguses. I'm not getting into a creation evolution debate. Okay, we evolved from funguses. Funguses were the first organisms on the planet. Right, they fed on the rocks, and then the rocks broke down, and everything else. And because of that, our immune system does not recognize fungus as an invader. So if your immune system fights it off at all, it does it very slowly, and it's very difficult to deal with. So usually what happens is they have to change your blood chemistry to get this stuff off, or they have to physically remove the fungus, or put a topical cream if it's on the skin type thing, right? Very difficult to get rid of. So what is this, right? It's often resistant to medicines. Yeah, that's because it's extremely difficult to manage a fungal infection. I'm thinking aspergillosis as another bad one, and even the most common one, like athlete's foot, Right, I forget the name of the Latin name for that. But anyway, it's becoming more common. Although C. auris was just discovered in 2009, it has spread quickly and caused infections in more than a dozen countries. It's difficult to identify. C. auris can be misidentified as other types of fungi, unless specialized laboratory technology is used. This misidentification might lead to a patient getting the wrong treatment. C. auris has caused outbreaks in healthcare facilities and can spread through contact with affected patients and contaminated surfaces or equipment. Good hand hygiene and cleaning in healthcare facilities is important. How do I know if I have a Candida Aurus infection? Candida Aurus is still rare in the U.S. People who get invasive Candida infections are often already sick from other medical conditions. The common symptoms of invasive Candida infection are fever and chills that don't improve after antibiotic treatment for a suspected bacterial infection. Right? So you could have, right, so they give you antibiotics thinking it's bacteriological, and it's fungal. They do nothing. Antibiotics do nothing with funguses. However, it is possible to have a fungal and bacterial infection at one time, so they'll often, just like with COVID, people and other viral pneumonia, they give you antibiotics to make sure you do not have a dual infection, right? I'm not a healthcare guy. I just know a lot about this stuff. Right. So who's at risk? Family members and other close contacts with C. auris. Clean your hands with hand sanitizer or soap and water before and after touching a patient with C. auris or equivalent in his or her room. Remind healthcare workers to clean their hands. And so basically, it's all hand contact, basically, with this. And this is an emerging illness, right? They're still doing research on it. So this is something that you need to keep an eye on. We're going to keep an eye on this program. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to start with the interview. And we will be back. This is Robert Bradley Jr. So I'm here with Rob Bradley, who shares a name with another Rob Bradley, a local guy here. He was one of the speakers today at the International Conference on Climate Change. And tell us about yourself, Rob. And if you're a speaker here, that means you're very high up in the policy or scientific arena.
Perhaps so. I am the founder and CEO of the Institute for Energy Research. Our main office is in Washington, D.C., and we're the free market voice on all things energy. And we find ourselves getting into climate change issues and other environmental issues because they're such an integral part of energy policy.
So, I've asked this with everything. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where's your background, education-wise, organization-wise, where you're at?
Yes, I'm a historian of oil, gas, electricity regulation in the United States. I've written a number of books on these subjects, and the wisdom of history comes into play. You find out that a lot of mistakes we're making today were made many decades ago. And they could be avoided. So I like to bring a political economy angle to the energy debates.
So what's primary? I think most people here are free market people here, as opposed to whatever we're describing the other side. Some people have used very strong words on this program today. I will put those words in your mouth. Free market versus the other side. What do you see the future of where we're going in this country or in this Western world?
Well,
you know what's going on in the Eastern world. What about the Western world?
Well, we're in a bad situation on energy policy. Obama had something to do with it. Biden had a whole lot to do with it. And in particular, our electricity grid is very wounded in states like Texas and California. Michigan, elsewhere, because we have so much wind and solar that's very unreliable. It's weather dependent. It can be here one moment and gone the next moment. And from all the subsidies and preferences that go to wind and solar, it has caused the premature retirement of baseload or reliable energy such as coal, natural gas, even nuclear. So we have weak grids around the country. There's more wind and solar coming in. It is subsidized almost without limit. And so the idea of brownouts, blackouts, or price spikes where you get your electricity but you have to pay a whole lot for it are part of the landscape.
So this was the problem with Texas, I believe it was 2 winters ago.
Yep, 2 years ago we just had our second anniversary, and that was long predicted because wind and solar were coming on the grid more and more and more, and people saw it coming, and it took the perfect storm, Storm Uri, to expose the problems. Now, some will say, well, gas plants, coal plants, they were not operational, they underachieved. Well, guess what? You need incentives for these plants to perform up to capacity. And we lost a lot of capacity, there's no new capacity, and there's a lot of cost cutting. So sure enough, under stress, the reliables failed, and it's sort of a Atlas Shrugged situation, if you are familiar with Ayn Rand.
Oh, very familiar with that. Right, at a certain point, everybody just says, the heck with it, we're not going to deal with this anymore. It's not worth the risk and the reward.
That's right.
What I call the aggravation factor. It's not worth the aggravation.
Right. So we have all this phantom capacity that could have saved us, but it didn't. It wasn't in play just because of the bad incentives.
So, California, I know in the late 1990s they had an issue there with the auctioning of the power and everything. They ended up with a power shortage. One of the, if memory serves me right, one of the causes of that was this technological revolution that we have with computers. If you recall the Y2K situation, everybody bought new computers, and everything that never panned out, right? And everything else. And it increased, the power needs increased, like ridiculous amounts and everything. Now we're seeing issues where California is depopulating at a certain extent. New York State, where I'm from, is depopulating down south. Do they actually have, so it seems like the areas like Texas, they're going to need more power. And they're getting less capacity in the grid, less of a base flow or base capacity in there. Do you see this problem continuing?
Yeah, it's Texas electricity demand is going up, and particularly if the government subsidizes electric vehicles, it's going to be that much more. So with wind and solar continuing to come on, we have a real problem here. And now what they're talking about is demand side management, where if you have a smart meter in your home, then the utility or the regulators can say, well, nope, we're not going to give you the power you want, or it's going to be at a prohibitively high price, or there could be old-fashioned rationing like we had in World War II.
I know, and there's been reports of the smart meters where they're just shutting off, or putting people into a brownout situation. Then they're coming home and wondering why their appliances are all fried.
Right. So really my message to your listeners is don't get a smart meter because if you get one of those in the home, Big Brother is with you.
Well, what they're doing now is if you have a smart meter, if you do not have a smart meter, I just found this out, they're charging you $10 more a month on your electric bill.
Well, there you go. It's all coercion.
So one of the things that we talk about is security to the grid, right? So NBC News to their credit, right? They don't really always give fair coverage, like all the other networks out there. They uncovered that there were over 600 attacks to the power grid, physical attacks, between 2014 and 2019, something like that. And in North Carolina, most recently, they knocked out one whole county was knocked out. And it's not a right wing or a left wing type of thing. They're not even sure who all of these people are. What are your thoughts on that, on the actual physical security of the power grid?
Well, we need to harden the grid. Maybe we need a lot of concrete around substations. Maybe we need to have electric cables underground rather than on the poles. This is where the money should be spent on, not on wind and solar. I mean, if you looked at the tens of billions of dollars that have been spent in Texas and in other states, imagine the opportunity cost, what that could have gone for, and we could have had a hard grid.
How about EM pulses? There's been a lot of talk on electromagnetic pulses, specifically X flares and higher from the sun, knocking out portions of our grid. Do you foresee that based on what your experience and your knowledge? Do you believe that that's...
You know, you're ahead of me there, Jim, so I'm going to listen to you.
Well, there's been numerous reports. The government feds had a report going out on a commission for many years on threats to the power grid. EM pulses from either a nuclear bomb going off over the center of the United States and things that would actually knock out parts of the power grid through an electromagnetic pulse, and also from in the 1860s, I believe it was 1868, you had a Carrington event where all of the telegraph lines were destroyed by a solar flare. Does your organization address any of those?
Not really, but it sounds like this is an issue where the resources should be going to, and not to wind, solar, decarbonization, and all these other things. We have real problems, and we need to address them.
So I've asked this from every person I interviewed today, but I think you already pretty much have answered this. Where do you see this going in 10 years or 5 years out into the future? And what can we do as the average person, the average Joe, to address this?
Yeah,
because that's really where we need.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Yeah, we're on a road to serfdom, particularly with electricity policy. We continue to go down the interventionist road, more government rather than less in response to crises. And so we all have to educate each other and get the political energy to stop all this, to stop the subsidies to wind and solar, to stop all this net zero talk, and to get the grid back in good shape. The owners of the grid need to control it. So we need to sunset, get away from the regional transmission organizations and the independent transmission organizations, so-called ISOs, RTOs, that monopolize the electricity grid over large parts of the state. So we need to get government out of the planning business with electricity on the supply side and the demand side.
So what we always try to talk about is that on our program, one of our main focuses is on disaster preparation, emergency planning. It's all part of safety here. We do a lot of disaster training here, either on the air or in person. One of the things that I try to stress is guaranteeing that you have a secure electrical source.
Yes.
Whether that's been a generator, and I know this is where you talked about solar power and everything. Solar power does have some uses.
Off the grid.
Off the grid.
Off the grid. It's
grid.
always had a free market niche.
It's all in the free market niche on here. this alarms me that, it continues to alarm me that we have security issues, capacity issues, negative incentive issues for the whole power grid system.
Right.
And, it's very, very concerning to me, in emergency management and planning and everything. I guess my question is what would you recommend the average person, what can they do to help guarantee electrical security for them? We talked about the government solutions and everything like that. What do you think the average person can do other than educating themselves, and forcing the politicians, right, to the ballot box to
that's a lot of it there. Lots of local communities are protesting against new industrial wind turbines being built in their areas, solar arrays that take up acres and acres. That's a good start too. These facilities are all government enabled, so let the NIMBY problem, let it rain over these artificial projects, because it'll make the grid more reliable. So we need to stop adding wind and solar. We need to start retiring existing wind and solar, and we need to get to the best energies as chosen by consumers, and that's natural gas-fired combined cycle and state-of-the-art coal plants, which are very clean these days.
There's been a lot of talk about local small-sized nuclear reactors in communities, or there's a movement, I don't know how involved your organization is in this, where they would make, so you have plenty of submarines and nuclear aircraft carriers out there, having smaller generating stations in each community.
Right.
Would this go, do you have any comments on that? Would that go to?
Well, it's prohibitively expensive. And the time frame for building these things is years and years. Some of that's due to regulation, but on the other hand, the government, through the Price-Anderson Act, guarantees there's a liability maximum, and so the taxpayer is ultimately on the line for nuclear safety. So my solution to this is a free market approach, where if the plant is economic and if it's safe, and meaning that they can get their own insurance, then nuclear has a role. But with high interest rates, it's really ruined the economics of nuclear even more than it was before, because these are multi-year projects. I mean, you can go 5, 8 years before you get any electricity. So,
And that's an optimistic view.
That's probably optimistic. So the nuclear industry existing capacity is low cost, and unfortunately existing capacity is getting penalized by wind and solar, because wind and solar is the cheapest on a marginal cost basis because of the price of wind, and solar is less than the price of uranium. So it's ruining the margins of the nuclear plants, and they're prematurely retiring. So wind and solar, lots of unintended consequences.
So, was there anything else you wanted to talk about? I'm pretty much out of questions here.
Well,
I'm not being prepared. I think I did pretty good.
You did great, and it's 5 o'clock, I think.
Yes, it is. 5:17.
All right. Well, great. Thank you,
Right.
Jim. That was fun.
What's the name of your organization and your website?
The Institute for Energy Research,
Right.
IER. And I have a blog called
Master
masterresource.org,
Resource.
masterresource.org.
I really appreciate this.
Good. It was a good
with
interview.
this, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and its guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast are only examples. They should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based only on very limited and dated open source information. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the position of the company. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the creator of the podcast, Jay Allen.